Hello, everybody. Gonna be talking about some acoustic stuff at the beginning of the chat, then I'll get to the amp questions for the really loud stuff. Acoustic guitars are a great love of mine that don't feature on the channel very often for the obvious reasons. Tube amps and acoustics aren't really best friends except in very special circumstances. And I think Rosewood Steel's going to enjoy this bit. Maybe some of the rest of you will as well. This is my 99 or 2000, I don't remember, Southern Jumbo. It's from the Bozeman. And it's got a replaced bone nut and saddle, intonated saddle, and I changed out the tuners for the keystones because I didn't like the white buttons it came with. Other than that, and it's got a Baggs dual source that I have not used in 10 years, but it's still there. And this is the guitar I've had the longest. This is 25 years now of this guitar, and I love this guitar. But that guitar was played everywhere in all kinds of weather conditions, and the belly was was bellowing up. A big belly was forming, and some braces were coming a little bit loose, and it has a couple cracks in it, just from humidity and heat, and even has discoloration in some places from where I played it outside at night, and I had mosquito spray on and all that stuff. That is the guitar. So I wanted to make its life a little bit easier and have a guitar I could take places and not worry about so much. And I got a Taylor. 5 something, 8 something, I don't remember. It's the $900 Taylor is the one it looks like the one that Lindsey Buckingham plays. And it was a good guitar, but it was never my guitar. It never had the voice I wanted. So I found this Eastman E8D, which is Eastman's version pretty much of an HD28. And this thing has been fantastic. And while it's still a very nice guitar, it would be considerably less to replace than the Gibson. So, and I love this guitar too for different reasons. And that might have just clipped the mic because of 2 things I'll be talking about. Back in 2020, the first 6 months of the pandemic, and I was housebound and I couldn't really go anywhere, I ordered a bunch of strings, and I tried a whole lot of different strings because I've been using D'Addario EJ16s and EJ17s just for the past decade. And I wanted to see what else was out there, so I tried some D'Addario EXPs. No thank you. I tried some Elixers. Very much no thank you. Horrible things. And I had some Martin low flexible core, flexible tension things, whatever the Tommy Emmanuel set. And I liked those a lot. They sounded better on this guitar. On the Gibson, they were a little bit floppy. But given that I had diminished income and an unknown future at that time during the pandemic, I didn't want to keep changing acoustic strings all the time when I primarily play electric for my job. So I tried some Kurt Mangan coated strings. I use phosphor. I also played around with Monel, nickel, and 8020 during that period of trying strings. I went back to phosphor. But Kurt Mangan has a really nice coated phosphor that feels like a regular string, and it sounds great. And that's what you just heard on the Gibson, with a caveat. When I ordered some new ones, I hit the wrong button, and instead of ordering mediums, 13 to 56, I ordered extra light, so 11 through whatever. And on this guitar, the 11s sounded kind of weak, but okay. And on the Gibson, it was just mush, just nothing there. The guitar went dead with the 11s, and that's what's on there. It sounded okay for little strummy bits, but there's no gas in the tank. You could do all this stuff, but you can't do that stuff. And so I Went back into looking into strings. I know I can always get some more Kurt Mangans, but I saw a lot of people talking about the D'Addario, XS, and XTs. And from the XT description, sounded like maybe an improved version of the EXPs, but I did not like the EXPs. So I tried a set. I got a 3-pack of these XS 1356. That's what's on here. And this guitar is woken back up. It does the thing. And I'm about to try the same strings on the Gibson because it needs to wake back up, and I'm going to be changing those out while I talk about amps and stuff on here. These strings are not my favorite, though. They're still very slick feeling, diminished string noise as a result compared to real, traditional strings. I still call them real strings. And it's an unusual feel. I bet these would be fantastic on a 12-string, where you can get a lot of that. But it just feels odd to me. I'm going to live with them for a while and see if they grow on me. I also want to see over time when I play if the coating begins to flake off like they did on the elixirs I used to try. But I very much expect in about 4 months I'll order another set of the Kurt Mangan. And I'll probably do the bluegrass for this one, which is 12 up top and 13 on the bottom, so 12 through 56, and the regular mediums on the Southern Jumbo. But I'm going to change the strings out on that Gibson while we talk about amps. So let me get a sip of my coffee. And maybe do this a little bit. I'm mechanized around here, people. Thanks, Rosewood Steel. Well, that one is sounding really good, and this one is going to be sounding really good in a while. It's going to take me a while to change strings while talking. It's a little bit of a kind of thing. Yeah, the wallpaper music. Yeah, the XS. This is day 2.5 on the ones on that. And a lot of the initial zing went away, and they're sounding really nice. Yeah, I love the parallelograms on the Southern Jumbo. Basically, I wanted a J160E because I was a huge Beatles nut. Then I played a J160E, and they sound like crap in the room. But this has the aesthetic minus the volume and tone knobs for the terrible sounding P90. So it has the look, but it's basically a J45 dressed up to be pretty. Let's see. Dennis Rome, thinking about a new amp. Any insights into the Marshall ST20H Studio? Well, if you're in the UK or Europe, maybe. They're not very overpriced there. If you're in the States, they're crazy overpriced. And this is aside from any potential tariffs that may be introduced. They're just really crazy. Twice as expensive in the U.S. as they are in the EU and in the UK. And I don't think that they're worth, they may kind of be they're worth on the EU and UK markets. They're nowhere close to half the value of what they charge in the States. For the same price, you could go get a Friedman and have a truly great amp. So I'm not a big fan of the ST20H. Sorry. They're just not really well built for the price. You get the same stuff that you'd find on the Origin, which is not a very good amp either, but at least that's a $600 not very good amp as opposed to a $1,900 not very good amp. Hey, Rosewood Steel, speaking of which, I'd seen your question while I was prepping for this. That's why I knew that you'd probably enjoy this stuff. How much will replace transformers affect an amp? My 65 Super Reverb had its all the ones except for the reverb transformer replaced with Silverface era Schumachers. Well, the answer is it depends. Most Schumacher transformers from the 70s are exactly the same as the one from the 60s, and you would not notice any difference. It's possible, though, starting like 76 and later, some of the Super Reverbs were ultralinear, so they had a different output transformers, some of them have different power transformers. So if it's like to like, if it's like a 74 replacing a 65, you're not going to hear any difference other than the variation you get from two 1965 Schumachers, for instance. So it's not really anything to worry about. And in general, within the tolerances of transformer design, you're not going to necessarily notice any predictable difference between them. Now, you may find out of 3 output transformers, one may sound better than the others, and they could all be from the same manufacturer, the same model number from the same year. But we can't know that ahead of time before installing things. That's something we discover after the fact. At least I do. I'm about to do a video on this very topic because I have a very nice 64 Deluxe reverb here, where the only thing I've changed out so far, have had to change out, has been the Roach, the electrolytic capacitors, and the droppers in the power supply, and the screen grid resistors. The rest of the amp has all original resistors, and the ceramic and film caps are all original. The pots are all original. The transformer is all original. It's getting a new speaker while the old original speaker is going to get reconed, and the owner has a choice of putting that in later. So, it's going to be the ideal restored, but still 90% original Fender that people lust after. And then I've got a 64 or 65 or 66 non-reverb Princeton, where I've had to replace a lot of things, including the power transformer. And so I'm going to be doing a video talking about the Shipothesis concept. How much do you replace and it's still the same, with it still being the same thing? And I got this string winder, which makes winding the strings great, but my old cheap one had a thing to pull the plug, pull the pins. This one doesn't really do that very well. And I'm trying not to scar the wood. Usually I can just get in there with the flat side of these nippers and lever it up. These aren't wanting to come out for some reason. I need to get another cheap one of these. I need to buy one of the dedicated pin pullers. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble right now, but let me focus on this a little bit, because you only get one shot to fuck up your top. All right. Let's see. So I think you're good, Rosewood Steel. Any experience with Garnet amps? Sorry, no. People ask me about that all the time. Bambule, thank you for the comment on the cool photo. That's when Nikki and I first met 13 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago. That's like probably the second week we were dating. I went over to her house and I brought my guitar. That was when I was thin and looking good. She still likes me for some reason. I hope to lose some weight. I've had some health issues the past years, and then now I have no time to live at a gym or anything. There it goes. Okay. I ordered some replacement, in theory, better bridge pins for this thing, because these old plastic ones have been chewed up over the decades. Anyway, let's see. Anyhow, where are we? Stepford Crash Pilots has got a big question strung out into multiple points. Let's see here. Is it safe to operate a passive power attenuator with both speaker and line out connected? Isn't it? Most of them should do that just fine, because the line out is usually just a resistive tap off of the speaker tap, the way they might do in a Mesa. Those tend not to sound very good, and if you're lucky, it also has a transformer in there somehow, giving some isolation so that there's not much of a load. But read the user manual. It's kind of depend on the attenuator you have. And what do you mean? Shouldn't the question marks be at the start of the first line? I think you did it just fine. Yeah, I saw the question. So the only reason I want the question marks there is just so I could see where the questions are in the chat. And I don't mean to be like a punctuation Nazi about it or anything. Got enough of other kinds in the world right now. But yeah, you should be okay, but it's going to depend on the attenuator you're using. See the instructions. If it's not safe, they'll say, do not do this. Masha 99278 says, I like your 67 basement AB165 AA864 hybrid results. Thanks, man. I do not have a complete list because I have given so much information in those videos, and it's really just look at this schematic, and up to here it's this schematic, and then it goes to this schematic. I mean this nicely. If you're qualified to do the work, you already have all the information that you need, as long as you pay close attention to little things like, oh, and you have to reverse the green and black back to black being to ground on the output jacks, stuff like that. So I'm not doing these videos so much for other techs as I am trying to explain how things work to guitarists. And I think that anyone who wants to do work like that, you know, if they've worked on other stuff and gotten their core learning together, then they can see that video and say, oh, that's what he's doing. I'll just do that. That makes sense. As opposed to people who are just copying a layout or, you know, what they see without understanding what it is that they're seeing. Because I want to discourage people from doing that. I don't want someone to think they're doing what they saw me do, or just follow a list without understanding the whys, because then they could damage their amp, and they would, of course, blame me. But there's no magic to it. It's hey, the output section from the A864 sounds great with the basement AB165 preamp, whereas the AB165 output section goes zzz. Let's see. Amp alternator. Any thoughts on the Marshall 1974X 18-watt hand-wired reissue build quality? I've not had one of the reissues. I don't think I've had lots of the real deals, and they are fantastic amps. If it's built like the 87 and 59 reissue series, it should be just fine. Might have a few caveats, but without having an example on the bench in front of me, I can't tell you. But I really do like the 1974X. I've got a Princeton 65 reissue with a P12Q. Is the Marshall considerably louder, close to a DRI? Yeah, it is going to be a lot louder than the Princeton. The Princeton's 12 watts with the negative feedback, and that Marshall is 18 watts, and it's pretty raunchy. The 18 watt and the AC15 and the Deluxe Reverb are all considerably louder with more headroom, if you want, than a Princeton. Yeah, I've tried John Pierce strings. They sounded really good, but they sounded really good for a relatively short period of time. And if I were a professional acoustic guitarist who was gigging all the time, I would gladly use them and have, you know, change them out every 2 nights or whatever. But I'm not. And if I can make a set of strings on these things last 6 months, that makes me happy. JD's associate says, I'm a big Monell string guy. Everything else gets rusty on me too quickly. Well, try the Kurt Mangan coated phosphor if reaction to skin is your issue. I liked the sound of the Monells. If I were just trying to sound like the Beatles, I might have stuck with them, because they definitely have a bit of a vibe in that direction. Very mid-range focused. I really like that. But it would be something that if I had a third guitar, or if I were recording and wanted a certain sound for a take, I put Monells on for that track. But it wasn't my ideal. You know, every time you pick up the guitar, that's the sound that comes out. But if you're choosing them because of longevity, because of how your hands react with metals, try the Kurt Mangan coateds. They're really I don't have any sponsorship. I don't get paid by Kurt Mangan or anything. That is not a bought opinion. I've tried a whole bunch of stuff, and so far they are the only coated strings I've tried that sound and feel like regular, really good quality strings that just don't happen not to tarnish, which I appreciate. Quick thing on this, I do 2 at a time. I do the E and A, then I do the E and the B, then I do the D and G on a 3 on a side headstock, just so I'm out of my own way. And I cleaned and conditioned the fretboard last week when I put on the sad set of lights by mistake, extra lights by mistake. So now I'm going to do my little bends to help seat the ball end. Just a way to help make sure it wants to sit up against the block inside as opposed to just resting on the plastic pin. Little bits help. And normally I might do this here on the bench with it on a neck stand and all that fun stuff, but I wouldn't be able to focus on talking to you guys at the same time. We can't have that, can we? All right, that's good. Sometimes I'll go in there and I'll feel it, just make sure that it's resting up on that bridge plate as opposed to the pin. But you can only do that a few times if your hands are as big as I am, and I'm not going to use a setup mirror while doing this. Yeah, I got some damage and warping on these pins. Definitely time to replace them. And for those who don't know, I guide the string end, the ball end in using the pin. I'm not putting the string in and then pushing down with the pin afterwards. I'm getting the pin lined up and then pushing it down to seat with the bridge pin. All right, let's see. Yeah, let's see. Thanks, Stepford Crash Pilots. I love playing Zeppelin and Beatles and even some Stones stuff. I play a lot of stuff, or I have played a lot of stuff that I don't usually play on YouTube because of copyright strikes, I'll sneak a little bit. And as I started from the intro, I'm a huge Simon and Garfunkel fan. Paul Simon in his prime was just a monster. I love listening to bluegrass guitars, but I can't listen to bluegrass. I get bored with it. Can JJKT66 take 600 volts like data she claims? Was going to try an app that can exceed 400 volts. Basil Tiffany asks. Yeah, absolutely. 600 volts on a KT66 should be fine on the plate. See what the screen max is. I bet the screen max is going to be like 450 or 500, probably 450. Try not to exceed the screen by very much. And if you find yourself exceeding too much, you can always try Zener diode tricks on the screens. I don't have time to get into that right now. But if you Google screen, tube screen Zener trick, it'll come up. It's really simple. You find the 5-watt Zener diode that drops the number of volts you need to drop. Say it's 20 volts or 30 volts, and maybe like a 47 ohm resistor, 2-watt in series with that. It's real simple. And I try to do my initial seating and stretching as I go. Makes it easier. Thalia has really nice bridge pins, Richard said. I ordered some Waverleys for this, and because the Eastman, I'm also going to replace the Eastman because it came with these ebonies that are black with a abalone dot, and I don't like the sound of ebony as much as other materials. Plus, it's an HD28, it should have the white with the black. I ordered some Waverleys only to find that the Waverleys are a 5-degree taper, and those take a 3-degree taper. So I have to return those Waverleys, and I've got a set of tusks coming that'll fit on that without any modification. So many things to learn about. I like DR strings, but I've not messed around with their acoustic strings. I like their electrics, but I didn't play any better with the nickel wounds and all that stuff, so I just went back to Diodario NYXLs for all the electrics. I really like them. They're consistent. Someone said YouTubers don't get paid unless you watch 30 seconds of the preceding ad. Is this true? I've been letting the ads finish. Hey, I appreciate it if you've been doing that. I don't know. Back before I had premium, I skipped every ad I had the opportunity to skip. And I think I still get paid because the only ads that I allow are the ones just at the very beginning or very end of the video. And most of them, hopefully, are the skipping 4, 3, 2, 1 kind. And I still get paid. Maybe I'm getting paid a mere pittance compared to what I could do if I hit you guys with ads every 2, 3 minutes, like a lot of channels do. But I don't want to make my money aggravating you guys or selling advertisers, making money for advertisers. So I don't know if that's true. I know it's probably I know that if you click on one of the products that are being advertised, I do get paid more, but I don't care. Click on it if it's a product that you think might actually be interesting or good or useful, but don't do it to make a donation to me because it's not going to be a lot. And I don't want to take that time out of your life. Basically, I have to have the ads. It's nice that I make some money off it, but I have to have the ads. Otherwise, YouTube doesn't tell you guys about the video. They're not going to promote a video that doesn't have ads. So, hey, Stuart, VH Photo. Hi from the UK. Hi, Stuart. Nice to meet you, so to speak. The amp I've coveted for many years is a Vibrolux 1965. The thing that has stopped me buying it, other than money, is whether to buy a modern boutique alternative. Thoughts? I am unaware of any modern version of a Vibrolux reverb, which is a shame. I'm not sure if Fender's done a reissue of that no one's bought, and therefore I haven't seen it, or whether they have not done a reissue of it. Vibrolux reverb is one of my favorite amps that Fender ever did. And I'm unaware of any boutique builders who are making them. I'm sure that someone is. Mojotone has a kit for it, or at least they sell the chassis and the cabinet for it. So I'm sure you can make one from Mojotone stuff. Maybe Headstrong has got one. I don't know. But there's also the option of buying a silver face 70s version if you can't afford, say, a 65, like most of us can't afford a 65 these days. 66, anything pretty. 64 and early 65 are going to be the most valuable, followed by the 67, 68, followed by 69 through 72, and after that, they get less expensive fairly quickly, but they don't become lesser amps until 80, 81, whenever the production ended. So there's no shame in having a beat-up silver panel Vibrolux reverb if it's all working well under the hood. And there's no reason a 76 can't sound every bit as good as a 66. So just a second, I got to do the slippery bit on the unwound strings. They like to slip out of my hand if I don't keep some tension there. Let's see, next question. I'll pop it up on the screen in just a second, but Surge98, for a 2204 build, is it better to wire the standby switch before or after the rectifier diodes? What approach is better for the life of the rocker switch? Thanks. Well, the best way to do it... I need to give the string some more winds. Usually 2 frets is enough on this guitar. Not sure why. Maybe it slipped. Anyway, before I put a permanent kink in there, let me give it a little bit. I want like 3 winds below. So maybe I just wasn't paying attention because I'm doing this with you guys. I'm not usually doing this while having a conversation. All right. So 2204 build, you want to preferably be switching the HT secondaries of the power transformer. So before the diodes, that way your standby switch has AC on it, not DC. So you wire each HT secondary to 2 poles of a 2-pole single throw or 2-pole double throw standby switch. And then the other side goes to the diodes, and you connect the bias wire to the unswitched side of one of the poles connected to HT. And where'd the B string go? There it is. And that way, your switch has AC on it, which it's rated for, as opposed to DC, which it's not, and it won't fatigue anything, or much less likely to. And that's how Marshall did it from the factory on a 2204, and that's why I recommend you do on a 2204. Sometimes Marshall, in some, I don't know if it was specific runs or specific employees, or just happened from time to time, they connect the bias to the switched side as opposed to the unswitched side. And when that happens, your bias is switching on and off with standby as well, which is not as good, because you want to have that bias present at all times before the B plus is available to the plate and screen. So make sure, if you have an old 2204, that the bias wire is tied to the unswitched side of the standby switch. And if you're building one yourself, do that. Let's see, next. So there's Surge 98's question. Hey, Magisterium. All right, let's see. James Music Products. Any thoughts on the benefits of using individual power supply filter caps versus multi-section can caps? Do the multi-section can caps affect each other due to close proximity? In general, when it is possible, I think you should not use multi-section can caps, but rather use individual capacitors, whether it's radial or axial. It's not always possible, or it's not always pragmatic. Like an old Marshall, dual 50s, dual 100s, or high watt, that's okay. Often they're very close to each other in terms of where the circuit ground goes, whatever, and it works and it saves space. But if I were building a new Marshall style amp, I would not design it using multi-section can caps. I would design it using modern radials, and the space between capacitors can make the sound better. You get less crosstalk, lower ESR, all kinds of benefits out of that. But you don't have to replace a multi-section can cap on site. I've got a Princeton here, I was talking about earlier, I'm going to be doing a video on tomorrow, and on that Princeton, you can already see the previous video on it. I replaced the multi-section can cap with a board with modern radials on it, because the can caps that are made today, with the exception of, say, the F&T dual sections for Marshalls, and I guess the JJs, most of the multi-section can caps today are crappy capacitors, and they're all jammed up next to each other, and you can have detrimental effects from having those capacitors so close to each other. You won't always, or maybe it won't be objectionable, but your question is absolutely coming from the right place. How would I add a master volume to a 5E3 amp? It's a Mojo Tone kit, installed a pre-phase inverter, but seems to cut volume 50% between 1 and 2. How would I do it? Creaky bones. A 5E3 is tricky because you don't want to use a pre-phase inverter on a 5E3 because most of the overdrive is actually coming from the phase inverter. You're driving the phase inverter really hard at that. It's got a cathodiene phase inverter, which is 2 triodes. The first triode provides gain. The second triode is nominally unity, but it's not really. But anyway, that does the splitting. One signal comes off the plate, the other one comes off the cathode. If you turn down the volume before the phase inverter with a pre-phase inverter master volume, it's the same thing as turning down the volume on the volume pot, only you kind of have a different taper, and so as you discovered, you'll lose gain really fast in kind of unpredictable, unpleasant ways. There are some cathodiene tricks people do, and you can play around with that. I don't think it's worthwhile. If a master volume on a 5E3, to some extent you can get away with a Larmar. A Larmar can be effective, and same one that I've shown in my Larmar master volumes for Fenders and Bassman and other videos and Marshalls. But remember that the goal is not to make a 100-watt amp sound like a 1-watt amp. The goal is not to get you from 120 dB to 50 dB. The goal is to get you from 120 dB to 95 or 100 dB, so that it's still loud enough to be played with the drummer, but you won't get evicted or kicked out of the club. And because I was talking to you guys, I put the D string in the G string spot, so I haven't finished. Never done this before. So I'm not a huge proponent of a master volume on a 5E3, but if you absolutely have to do one, you'd want to use a post-phase inverter. But then you get, besides any issues of whether it's that useful, physically it's hard to fit on the damn thing. There's just not a lot of extra real estate. I would suggest 5E3s are 12, 15 watt amps. So play it for what it is, and if for bedroom use, if you want to have it low volume, turn it way down and use an overdrive pedal. You'll probably get better results, or at least similar results. I need to flip the damn guitar over. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Similar results for a lot less money, and modifications aren't always the answer when it comes to amps. All right, let me try this here. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Surprised you don't see more acoustics made from alternative materials, Basil says. Well, there are a lot of acoustics being made with alternative materials now, with varying degrees of success. Marshall's been doing all the various laminates, high-pressure laminates, and the necks made of all these little strips of wood epoxied together, and rosin and other synthetic fingerboards. And Rainsong was doing graphite, and people have been experimenting with different tone woods than just mahogany and rosewood and maple. But so far, unlike the world of electric bass, acoustic and electric guitarists have proven to be very much traditionalists for the most part, aside from the Ibanez's and all that. But people want this kind of thing in looks and feel and sound. And if you give them this kind of thing in sound, but not in looks and not in feel, and someone knows that it's a different material, then you get biases involved, where even if it sounds the same, even if it sounds better, objectively, subjectively, someone just doesn't like it. No, sir, don't like it. So it's a tricky proposition, because you've got to be like so clearly better than all your competitors. And to start up a company these days costs an awful lot of money. You're competing with all these companies that are importing from Indonesia, etc. It can be a losing proposition. Now, as this global supply of wood changes, we will see companies, including that Eastman right there, that's a big company in China, and we'll see Yamaha, and from the Indonesian factories, we'll see PRS and Fender get in the game, and Gibson will probably be last to really begin to get things right. It will happen. It will have to happen. But it has not happened yet. All right, so the strings are on. And what's the next question before I pay attention to this thing again? Gas uses standard electric guitar strings on acoustic? Yeah? Yeah, if it works for you, that's fine. It'd be hard to find electric strings of a gauge that would drive a top like this consistently, but they are out there. If you like that sound, you might want to try some of the old. They've got some nickel strings now for acoustics. But hey, if you're happy with electric strings, go for it. I don't think I don't think it would work for me. For a 60s Fender amp, do I need an insulated tool to safely turn the bias pot while the amp is on? No, you do not. That is the pot of that bias pot on a Fender is at ground. You are already protected. Thanks, Tom. I'm sorry, Joshua, on the no bullshit look. My opinion of the best tubes for Fender amps as well as best replacement reverb tanks. Thanks. Well, tone control, the output tubes are going to vary. If you're going for 6v6s, I've been using Electro Harmonics with good success lately. If you're doing 6L6s, I like the Tungsol SDRs. If you're doing a rectifier tube, it's going to depend on the dealer. But in general, JJ rectifiers are pretty damn good. If you're using a 5U4G GB, then you can get a new old stock Joint Army Navy stuff. And if for 12 AT7s, I also buy the Joint Army Navy Phillips from the 70s. For AX7s, like a tremolo driver tube, I'll use a JJ ECC 83. For the other preamp tubes in a Fender, I like to use the Electro Harmonics 7025. As far as the bias tank, my favorite bias tank, I'm sorry, not bias tank, reverb tank. My favorite reverb tank on the market right now is the Mojo Tone Medium Decay. Not the long decay, not the one that you think is going to be the one that sounds like the old Gibson Accutronics. It's the medium decay that sounds like the old long decay Gibson Accutronics. Good morning, Wes. Raining in North and Southern California. Rosewood Steel uses the Dario XS. Well, that's what I just put on here. And I think the sound is good, so, at least initially, the first couple of days. We'll see how the coating lasts for me. I play harder than a lot of guys. And see how the sound morphs over the coming weeks. But I'm not a huge fan of the feel. They're very slick. They're not as slick as the Elixirs. And let's see. I'm gonna see if they start to shed and peel like lizards, like the Elixirs do. I'm just not a fan of Elixirs. And, I don't use any coated strings on the electrics because it doesn't matter how long the string lasts as far as coating. I bend all the time, and I'm playing those guitars all the time, and I get after 3 weeks, there are little divots on the underneath side of the string where it contacts the frets, and your intonation starts to go out. So it wouldn't matter if I had coated strings on my electrics or not. They're not going to last. SVT 4001 has an SVT3 Pro has a fuzzy sound at low volumes and plugged in the front or the return of the effects loop. Internet search suggests MOSFETs. Any thoughts? Well, I hate the SVT3 Pro and the 4. Those apps began to just be design nightmares. I don't mean to scare you. Could be the MOSFETs, could be dropping resistors, could just be solder joints. Those amps are really difficult to work on. I would suggest getting it fixed and selling it because someone's going to want, it's an Ampeg SVT. It doesn't sound like the SVTs from the 70s everyone wants, and it's not going to be reliable, and they're going to get less and less reliable. But, those things have so many large wattage resistors and so many transistors and MOSFETs, and any can fail. That can all cause a chain reaction. By now, it probably needs a full recap. It's just an awful lot of money to invest in something that may need an awful lot of money invested for another reason next year. I've heard nothing but good things about garnets, Randy. I just have not tried one. Out the Waz has an AC15C1. Normal channel has low output, pops and crackles without V1 installed. Any ideas? Well, you need to install V1 in order for the channel to work at all. Tube swaps and voltages are all good, thanks. It has a low output and pops and crackles. If V1 is not present, that's really strange. Because the output of V1 on that amp goes really, I mean, it's a coupling cap, the volume pot, the right cap across the volume pot, and then into a resistor, and then into I don't remember if it goes directly into a capacitor, which then feeds the input of an op amp, or if it just goes into the input of an op amp. So the op amp that it's going to could be at fault. You could have a issue with the low voltage power supply going to the op amp, which is unusual. I've not seen that in that model. Never had a problem with it so far. It's really well built. You could have a dirty volume pot, and that dirty volume pot is preventing the op amp input stage from having a consistent reference to ground. So I think it's very likely you just have a bad volume pot, or maybe just a dirty volume pot, because things should be silent if V1 is not installed. That's where to start looking. Thanks, Wes. Duck's glad to be here. Hotplate was very, very good for the time that it came out. Remember that the Hotplate is a bit overbuilt in certain ways, but it's only designed to give about 8 dB of attenuation before it sounds fizzy. Again, it's not for bedroom use with a 100-watt amp. It's so that you can turn your Marshall down to the point you can stand to be in the room with it. Turn your cranked AC30 down to the point where you won't get hearing damage from being in front of it. It's not to make it quiet, it's to make it less loud. So you get to 12 dB on a Hotplate, it's going to start to sound bad, but it will still be safe if it's maintained. The issue with old Hotplates is that some of those Hotplates out there are 35 years old at this point, and they may need maintenance. It's a lot of heavy lifting those things do, a lot of heat to dissipate, and any capacitors in there have gotten hot, gone through heat cycling for 30 years. So I would trust a Hotplate if it's in really good shape. Who is that angry fellow in the thumbnail? I wasn't angry. It was just a snapshot Nikki took of me playing guitar, trying to play a guitar on the couch, while later our late beloved friend Thorpe the cat was trying to snuggle right when I was trying to play. So if I was angry, maybe I was a bit perturbed at the cat. But that was 12 years ago. Did someone sing It Never Rains in Southern California? Yeah, they tried to warn you. Building and troubleshooting is the way to do it. Yes, but start with pedals. Start with basic electronics before you get into things with high voltage and current that can hurt you or catch on fire if you mess up. Pastor is absolutely correct, yeah. Just connecting the dots won't work for this kind of work. Hey, Randy, if you don't like Kurt M and you don't like Diodario's, but you like Martin Ernie Ball, that's fine. I've got friends who play Ernie Balls all the time, and I have certainly done my time with Martin strings. I like the consistency and availability of Diodario. And I really like the sound and feel of the Kurt Mangan coateds, but if you don't, that's cool. Have I discussed different ways to wind the strings on the tuning pegs? Locked, straight through? Well, I did in the video, because a friend of mine, great player, no concept of how to be a tech, brought in a guitar he'd strung, and the strings were just all kinds of crazy. So I did 2 videos on two different ways to string guitars. I didn't think you guys needed that here, but I'll show it to you. Let's see if I can get this to show up in the light. Got to block my face. So I've got one on the E and A. I've got 1 wrap over, 1 wrap under. I've got 1 wrap over, 2 under here, 1 over, 2 under here, 1 over, 4 under here, 1 over, 3 under here, so I should have cut the string a little bit long. I want them to be trapped between their winds, but I want to have no excess. Now, so these strings are on, and I have stretched them, but I have not even tried to tune them. So let me see what I can do. Let's see. I don't worry about getting to perfect pitch at the first step, because I know that with these strings are flat and I've tuned these up and I tune these up, these will go down. So. $13 to $56, you know it, DB. That should be pretty close. All right, let's see how close I got by ear real fast. Chat's not disconnected. I just wasn't talking. Sorry, goody. A little bit sharp. Just barely a little bit sharp. Pretty good for ear while doing a chat. I'm talking like I was a few cents sharp. I thought I was off a little bit, but don't make you guys sit around while I listened and waited for the stars to align in my head. This already feels a lot louder, more responsive, and should have a lot more bounce for the right hand. Let's see if this does what it's supposed to do. New string. Probably clipped the hell out of that mic. With the lights, it wasn't going to clip the mic pre no matter what I did. With these 13s, it is. Let's see. Sloppy. Out of tune again. That's why we stretch them out, right? So let me give some tugs here and there. Yeah, this guitar is alive again. I'm not sure if I really want to stay with these excess strings long term, but it certainly likes the 13s more than it likes the 11s. Can I play Margaritaville? I hope not. I mean, yes, I can, I won't ever. But it's got what, three chords and some salt. I cannot stand Jimmy Buffett. As a person, he may be fine. I don't know him. Messing up. Now both guitars are playing along. Cool. That's a much better place to be. Gibson's 24 3/4 and the Eastman is 25.9. Normally I would be warmed up before I try the Salisbury Hill thing, but I also I'm having some hand issues today. Both at the same time. I don't think you would want to hear me try to do the. Oh, what was that guy with the bad wigs and all the guitar magazines in the 80s playing both guitars at once? I mean, really gifted guy, but man, those wigs were something else. Let's see, making pasta for my daughter. Nice. It is hard to lose weight, Houston Row, but I'm not gonna. I don't think I'm gonna be taking any shots for it. I think I'm just gonna get my Michelangelo. That's right. Get my bicycle fixed. I got a bad tire. Trouble is, I've got a really large bicycle. I've got an Electra Townie built for a guy who's 6'2", but I've got a Volkswagen Golf that the bike won't fit into. I need to get a bike rack because the place close to me went out of business. I got to get a new tire on there. Not the, the inner tube is bad and the tire is bad. Just need to get on my bicycle and get off my butt at some point. But I don't want to take Ozempic or get shots or anything. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not gonna play any Cars. Sadly, I love the Cars. Certainly no Eagles. I don't like the Eagles, but I certainly won't be playing them on here. It saddens me to know that Bryan Adams' management or whoever is also very aggressive on that, because it means he's got a lot of great songs out there that kids won't know. What mods would I recommend for a Marshall JVN 410H? None. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, get something else. But it's not a platform for modding. Can I quickly explain what an isolated power supply does and how? People wax poetic about expensive power supplies, but nobody really explains why. Okay. What we think of as ground is not just ground. There are several different functions which are all referred to as ground, or that ground can serve as. There is shielding, which is usually ground. Sometimes it's not, but we're not going to get into that. So your guitar cable is shielded. And in the case of most guitar cables, the shield, which protects the signal from getting noise in the environment, is also the AC negative, or one of the paths that AC can take. AC is not positive or negative. Anyway, so one of the ways AC travels is on the shield wire. So that's an AC, let's call it AC negative for the purpose of the discussion. And shielding. There's also DC negative. DC can be truly negative, and that's not always ground. If you have a positive DC and it's in relation to ground, then the ground becomes the DC negative. You can also have a negative DC where the ground takes the form of positive. You can also have a bipolar, say plus 15, minus 15, where ground is not negative or positive. It's the exact midpoint. But for the purpose of our discussion, we're going to say that all these DC supplies, so you have a bunch of wall warts you want to replace with one isolated supply, they are all going to have a DC negative which functions as ground. Because of the nature of the audio path from one pedal to the next, you have an AC negative, which is flowing from point A to point B to point C to point D. And then you have the shield of point A, you have the shield of point B, the shield of point C in each pedal. And hopefully those are done in such a way that the shield is only terminated at the input jack, so the shielding function of each pedal is working, but is not creating a second ground path. And the only path the audio ground can take is what's steered by the wires from this input to the output, to the input to the output, to the input to the output. If you have a DC negative where you don't have transformers isolating them, then you are putting a path to ground from point A's output to point B's input, but at the same time you're also making a ground path from point A's power, DC power, to point B's DC power. So you have a ground loop. You get hum, you get interference. The shielding is less effective. So you can either use a whole bunch of wall warts, which each have a big transformer in them. You can use 9-volt batteries, where there is no shared power connection, or you can use a DC isolated supply that takes typically AC voltage from the wall, which is safety grounded, but then uses little isolation transformers inside. Some of them use other devices, but isolation transformers are common, so that you have a DC negative reference for each pedal, but they're not connected to each other. So it's like having, if you have 13 pedals on a board and you have 13 wall warts, that works. But you've got a huge strip with 13 giant wall warts. If you have 13 pedals on a board with 13 batteries, that works, but it's expensive. You have to change batteries. If you have 13 pedals on the board and an isolated supply, that works. It's like having batteries for each one. If you have 13 pedals on the board and you're daisy chaining one DC supply from this pedal to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, you're going to have ground loops and noise galore. I hope that helps. Some have transformers for each output. Some use switch mode supplies instead of transformers, but it does the same thing. The goal is to have no connection between this power output's 9-volt tap and this power output's 9-volt tap. So you cannot have a ground loop or a redundant path of any kind from this pedal to this pedal to this pedal through the power supplies. And they're not that expensive if you look at what batteries would cost to replace. I can't show it to you right now because it's down here underneath stuff, but I've got a switch mode one that True Tone makes that I really like, and over there I've got an old Voodoo Lab transformer one. The only disadvantage to the transformer model, the older version, like the pedal power supply, the pedal power plus and all that, is that there is a limit to the current you can do with the transformers, and they can really dislike your wah and vice versa, and so your wah may need to be farther away from the transformer supply. Wahs are really picky about noise, but they don't have to be expensive. I do not have celiac disease, yeah. Since I do 2 intermissions, I think no one would mind ads in the meantime. Well, when I take an intermission, you guys are still talking to each other, and I don't know. I'll think about it. I also think that there are probably a lot of people who would tune in and right during an intermission and catch an ad, and they're like, "Fuck, I'm out of here. I don't need to make money off you guys that badly. I appreciate it." Swamp Donkey Official? Yeah, well, I think if you were to look at the global percentage breakdown of where YouTube fees go, I'm technically on there somewhere, but I'm the fly shit on the spec. I think it's funny that people think that I'm very prim and proper, and then when I say something like that, they get mildly surprised, whereas, I mean, Brad's a true vulgarian. But, you know, I am from Memphis, got people. Hey, Joe Bucci. Yeah, I like the nickel bronze sound. They don't last very well for me. I wear a lot of regular strings out. Let's see. What I think about the standalone Fender Reverb unit, worth the time as a kit? I don't know about. I have not seen the kit. The main thing you have to do is you have to isolate the entire circuit from the chassis, so you don't get a ground loop when you plug into that, and then that into your amp, because they're both going to have references to AC safety ground. It can be difficult. The Fender reissue did that very well. The originals don't do that at all. So I'm not familiar with any of the kits out there to build one, so I'd have to see the kit to see if they take the ground float into account, because it's very, very necessary. It's a neat sounding effect. I like it. I'm glad it exists. It has some unique features, but an awful lot of what it does you can do to some extent with pedals. So it's going to depend on your specific needs and tastes and budget. I have not found a lot of the digital modelers really do spring reverb that well, but you know, so for guys who just want the occasional surf kind of thing, but it's not like the primary thing, you can probably be happy with various digital stuff without spending a lot of money for a dedicated Fender reverb unit. Yeah, the 6K6 is better for that than a 6V6, and certainly better than the EL84. Let's see, where was I? I use braid and solder sucker. It depends on the quantity of solder I'm removing. If I want to get a whole bunch of solder out of an eyelet, for instance, I prefer to use the solder sucker because it'll get a whole bunch out at once. If I'm trying to do delicate work or get the last bits of solder off something, then I find the braid is fantastic. Subscribe to my Only Amps channel. Yeah, I don't think anyone needs to think about that too long. I have not seen the new Vox hardwired guts yet. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Hayseed Hamfest. I tried them several times. Had too many failures. Yeah, the Salisbury Hill booms too much on the Marshall. I'll be a bad guy and blame the tool, but it's much easier on this. Much easier if I remember how it goes. I'm so not warmed up. It's also easier with a different pick. That was a Prime Tone 1.3, which is pretty stiff, bluegrass kind of pick. If I do this, it's 1.14 max grip nylon. It's kind of like a Herco Flex, only a little bit thicker. A little bit better for that light strummy stuff. Now the real part on that record was played by Steve Hackett on a nylon string guitar, classical guitar, and goes very different. This was old solo arrangement I used to do back when I played out. Because if you can keep that, the open A going throughout the whole thing, it just sounds bigger. What kind of action am I running on the Gibbo? Oh, about 5 mil, maybe a little bit more at the 12 on the low E, and about 4-ish on the high E with a little bit of relief. But I just went from a light, extra light string to 13s. So I expect in the next 24 hours I'm going to have to adjust the truss rod a bit on this. Let's see. But most of that is just because if I pick up an acoustic, normally I would play for 10 minutes before I let anyone hear me. But you know, I didn't have time to warm up today. Oh shit, we're talking inches. What are you talking? Talking inches on my Only Amps channel, but. Ever since I was a young boy, I played that silver ball. From Soho down to Brighton, I must have played 'em all, but I ain't seen nothing like it in any amusement hall. That deaf, dumb, and blind kid. Let's see. Where was I? Plays by sense of smell. Making the V2A cathode bypass cap switchable for slightly less gain, and a negative feedback switch resistor can be done with a single on-off. Yeah, you can do that, Pastor. See the various articles that are up on, what's my buddy's site? Oh, this site with all the amps, Rob Robinette. Rob Robinette's got all those mods, so it's all pretty easy to do. You may or may not love him, but you know, my advice is temp it in before you drill a hole. Make sure it's something that you're actually going to use, because nothing's worse than having a whole bunch of switches of regret added to an amp after the fact. Yeah. Tube charts are just slapped on and someone made a mistake. Yeah. Oh, Steve Hunter. Did I say Steve Hackett? Yeah, Steve Hunter. Sorry. I got my Genesis adjacent Steves mixed up. You're right, Richard. Well, they both played with those guys at various times. Yeah. But yeah, Steve Hunter on the classical on Salisbury Hill. It's a beautiful sound. And normally I can nail it, but normally I've been up for several more hours. And normally when I'm playing acoustic, I would be with a bunch of friends and be on my second beer before we even bring them out. So whether I played better or not, I think I did. Let's see. Willie Nelson played and recorded with holes with some bits of wood attached. Never heard anyone complain about his tone. Actually, Willie Nelson's sound only would be good in that context, but in that context, it's glorious. It's like someone asked Waylon Jennings about playing with Willie and Willie's unique sense of phrasing. And Waylon said, unique sense of what? Willie just can't count. I love Willie Nelson, but how will switching out an AX7 with a 5751 cause any issue? Well, will switching it causing any issues? You're going to get a little less gain, a little cleaner headroom if you put it in the first stage. Try it, see if you like it. Won't do any harm. Basically, a 12AX7 is nominally a gain factor of 100, and a 5751 is nominally a gain factor of 70. But if you want to know whether you'd like it or not, turn your guitar volume down to 7.5 or 8 and play for a while and see if you like it. It's going to be a lot of the same. Not quite, technically not quite, but it's pretty close approximation. Do different filter cap brands sound different? Does price cap equate to sound quality? Should I replace functioning Sprague Adams? Different brands do sound different. Different models within the various brands' lines can sound different from each other. Sound is the wrong way to look at filter caps. Sound in a correctly functioning capacitor is a function of the actual capacitance. There are other factors that goes into place, like the amount of ripple that the cap can withstand long term, the temperature rating, the voltage rating. But if all these factors are the same and they all have the same capacitance within, say, 5-10%, you're not going to reliably, predictably be able to tell the difference between them. But a lot of capacitors are not made the same. And for instance, a Sprague Atom used to be a fantastic cap. Today, they're a 65-degree rated, that's about the only spec we can get on them. We don't know what the ripple is. Cheap capacitor stuffed inside a much larger blue can that sold to you for $30. It's total garbage compared to the other stuff that's on the market. So yeah, different brands can sound different. And it's not just a matter of choosing one that sounds better out the gate, but the other factor is, will it still work in 5 years? Will it still work in 20 years? And the price equate to sound quality? Not at all, thanks to companies like Sprague with their Atoms. Just does not equate at all. I don't know that I would replace functioning Spragues unless I mean, I would myself, because I don't charge myself. I don't know if I'd pay someone to change them out if they were still working. But when the time came to change them, I would not be paying for Spragues again. Their time has passed. I have heard of, but not heard much of, Zex coil pickup CMOC J. There's so many things out there. I used to go to NAMM, and every time you would go to NAMM, there'd be some new product around every corner, which is promising to transform how people experience music. And they tend not to. So I tend to take all these promises with great grains of salt. And I have seen phenomenal things at NAMM. The Moog booth, at least one year, had a guy doing this up in the air, and you heard upright bass coming out of it. It was some kind of sensor thing, just based on his hands in the air, like a air theremin upright bass. But again, they got it working. I don't know how many times they got it working. It was working that day. It was pretty cool to watch. But no one's running out to get invisible basses. So you think you'd struggle to play at 4 to 5 mil at the 12th fret? Are you going? Well, you set up for like strats then. Well, let me check. Let me see where I'm actually at. That's for like old memory. Let's see where we're at right now, with the caveat that I anticipate this relief needing to be changed within the next 24 hours. Relief is different than string height, folks. I'm not telling Brad that. I'm just putting it out there for anyone who needs to know it. All right, 12th fret on the low E, I am at. Come on. This cheap thing is stiff. .52 at the low E. 2.3, 2.57 at the high E. So, okay. I was off by 1 and 1.5 millimeters. Yeah, that's how I measure, because it's easier for me to measure with what I got. I have the tool to do the gap beneath, but I don't have the tool to do the gap beneath here at my bench where I can grab it right now. So that's on this. And the Eastman's about the same. So, thanks, man. I like goodies. Let's see. Wood matters for acoustics. It does. What are my opinion on Victory amps? They're okay. I don't know that I'm impressed with them overall, but given how many bad things are on the market, yeah, they're pretty damn cool, I guess. It's like when Green Day came out. I could not stand Green Day. Little snotty California Clash wannabes. But in comparison to all the stuff that's come out after Green Day, they're freaking Mozart, So I'm not a huge fan of Victory amps. They are quite good. And if one floats your boat, that's what it's there to do, and it's probably going to work. But I don't know that I would ever think, I'm going to buy a new amp. Let's get a Victory. But I could be wrong. Nutella is evil stuff. Nutella is like chalky, fake chocolate, nasty, fake hazelnut. Ugh. I'm not. What do I think about sun amplification? Sun being back, sort of. Well, I think the original 100S and 200S were kind of bad, and I'm not a big fan of what Fender's doing now. I think they're doing Suns, so I can't imagine that the new one's good. Give some Crowded House. Let's see. Well, I'm capoed at the 2nd fret, so. Nothing like that. Italian plastic. Yeah, I love Crowded House. No, Karma Police is kind of Sexy Sadie backwards. Now this I was playing Fall at Your Feet because I was already capoed at the 2nd fret. I can't do it in the wrong key. Let's see. Next question. Holy cow. I went way past my normal intermission at the top of the hour. You guys got me distracted. So we'll go to intermission in about 5 minutes because I'm running out of coffee. You are not alone in your hatred of Nutella. Nutella is disgusting. There you go, Jeff Harper. That's the way to do it. Definitely start with pedals and breadboard on pedals and stuff. And remember, when you breadboard things, it's going to be noisy and unreliable. is not you, it's breadboarding. Breadboarding is just like one rudimentary way of testing a circuit, but then the wire length and proximity of things and layout matters just as much for noise with pedals as it does with amplifiers. And the real deal, you want to keep things very short and localized. Thank you, James Felsh. I have a very good voice when I talk, so don't sing. I like treacly things. Can I play Margaritaville? Ugh. Any tone stack value recommendations for silver-faced champs? Yeah. 250 picofarad, 100K slip resistor, 100 nanofarad bass cap, 47 nanofarad mids cap. Good news is Lee already did all that for you. 250K audio for bass pot, 250K J taper, and 1 meg J taper for treble and volume respectively. Good news, Lee already did that for you. The trick being that Silverface Champ has a 15K mids resistor, whereas the Deluxe Reverb would have a 6.8K. And if you turn the mids pot on a twin to like 5.5, you're about 1.5K at most, 1K to 1.5K. So the place in a champ to play around is with that 15K resistor. You can put things, you can either replace it or put things in parallel across it, including a pot if you want. But if you were to change that out from a 15K to a 6.8K or just put another 15K in parallel across it, you'd have an amp that sounds much more like a Deluxe Reverb for one part change. All right. If you do another jam with Ted Woodford, if you do another live with Ted Woodford, I demand a jam. I think that'd be great. I'd love to have Ted back on here and make him play. His internet was wonky last time, so I don't think that would have worked, but maybe next time. I love this guitar. This is just home base. Everything about it sounds like my record collection. And now with the mediums, it's come back to life. And now I've got to make friends with the Eastman. I really want to be better. And I've been listening to a lot of Bryden Sutton videos. He plays, a 36 version of the same idea, which I can't afford, but I don't play like him. And he uses a blue chip, very similar in dimensions to this prime tone. And he's got 1356 on his. So I'm like, if he can do it, I can do it slowly. And so the main difference is that guitar compresses. That guitar is very forgiving. That Gibson. That song sounds better with Rosewood. Why? They did it with mahogany. The guitar you just heard me playing it on is a lot closer to what the Beatles used. This is a big boomy thing, and it goes louder. And I'm so used to having that built-in compression of that mahogany shorter scale Gibson that I'm overwhelming myself with this thing. I'm getting too much of it, especially with this thicker pick. I mean, it's a cannon. I don't play bluegrass, but if a bluegrass guy were here with that right hand all developed, so, how's that go? goes. Sometimes this place get kind of empty. Sound of the breath fades with the night. I'm not getting the second chord right. Is you here? This might your destination. Under the Milky Way tonight. Let's see, the bridge goes. What is that second chord on Under Milky Way? Is it just? Well, I wasn't trying to sing, man. I was just trying to remember where I was in the song. If I sing it, first of all, you guys aren't tipping enough for that. Second of all, I would definitely get demonetized if YouTube caught that. That's what they really looked for. Let's take a 5-minute break. I'm going to take a leak and get some more coffee. Maybe 7-minute break, rather. And maybe I'll give you guys some NXS while we're on our Aussie tour. You know, it can't all just be. Oh, man. Norwegian Wood. The trick to that song isn't just a sitar. And it's not the... There's one guitar that John did that just says... That's it. But you take that out and the whole thing falls apart. That was 2 J160Es and a sitar. All right. Back in a bit. All right. On the break, I played, put on the track of the church, and it's this. As to the other Aussie stuff. I love old In Excess, but a lot of that stuff is like this little part mates with this other little part, mates with this other little part, and none of the parts work on their own, but together it was awesome. One guy would just do that kind of thing. So to do a solo arrangement of that stuff, you got to kind of stand on your head a little bit. Maybe that kind of stuff. I back in the day, Brad, when In Excess was this weird little alternative band coming out of Australia, and Journey and just kind of corporate rock were on the radio, and Don't Change and Listen Like Thieves came out. It was, this is edgy, and I really liked that stuff a lot. Falling Down the Mountain is fantastic. But it's not stuff that really holds up to doing a beautiful acoustic singer-songwriter arrangement of. I'd have to really think about it. But I used to remember play the stuff off of Kick. The hits I don't remember how it goes. Whatever it was. But I really like that stuff. But the depth, so much of that was just Hutchins' charisma and personality coming through. But in terms of the songwriting, I don't put it on the same level as Crowded House. They're the fucking Kiwis. Let's see, I have got to scroll down again. It went to a weird place on the stream, the chat. Let's see, where were we? Thanks, man. On the they both sound good. I mean, 57 not be my choice typically, or if I were to do it, I would have the pre down lower and have it aimed at the body junction like this. But I would probably grab that condenser behind me. Wrong pick. Wrong hand. I'll tell you what, man, I've played an awful lot of Martins, and this $1,200 Eastman plays better than most $2,700, $3,000 D28s that Martin's making these days. I'm not saying this is the best guitar in the world, but Martin rarely makes the best guitar in the world. If I were to spend that kind of money, I'd be looking at Bourgeois, not Martin. Yeah, I just got to learn to control this thing because it's a tiger in comparison. The Gibson is familiar, so I need to play a lot more of the Eastman now that it has the right gauge string. That top is fully awake and condensing now. Oh, I know all kinds of ways to record acoustics and everything else, but this is the setup. I would not usually use the vocal EQ and compression setup on a 57, but this isn't a record. I cannot do a few bars of Fuzzy from Grantley Buffalo because I do not know that song or that artist. Sorry. Francis Pascal, not a silly question at all, but do not begin to work on tube amps yet. Begin to work on pedals. Learn how electronics work at low voltages and low currents, and then begin to work on very simple tube amps like a Champ. There's a lot more to it than I might make it seem in the videos, and I don't want to give the impression that what I'm doing is easy or safe. It's neither of those things. But, it's doable, but it's just bite off manageable chunks. Let's see. Hey, Joe, are there differences in types of capacitors on tone pots when it comes from one brand to the next? I found that the Emerson Bumblebees really make a difference on my Les Paul. What say you? I say if you paid the money that Emerson charges, you better hear a damn difference, but you won't. The only place where you'd hear a difference would be if that Emerson that says it's like a 0.02 really is like a 0.067. Unless the capacitance is wildly different from capacitor to capacitor, you're not going to hear any difference. It's a passive roll-off circuit. There's not magic there. There's no voltage present. All the mojo that people are selling you is just sales. You could use any capacitor that measures the same in a passive tone circuit. It's going to sound the same. I hate to break it to you now. The Emerson cap that you have is fine. It does what it says on the tin, but it's just way too much money to pay for nothing. But when you pay money for things, you tend to hear a difference. Sorry. Sent to me, I don't remember what amp you had, but you replaced your standby switch and it cured the popping. Good. Still have low level hum, nothing plugged in, controls on one. What the heck? I don't know what amp you have. Put in the chat what your amp is. Maybe I can have an idea. Sorry. BC Electronics has got some 57 classics. He's changing those out. Hope you like them. I find them a little too mid-rangey for me. A little on the nasal side. Other people absolutely love them. So, see what you think. Willie has fatty tone. Do I have experience with Jupiter Cosmos electrolytic? I know they exist. I've seen the price point, and I know that Jupiter is not making their own capacitors. I don't know who's making them for them, but I don't see any benefit to paying that price for a pretty label. Willie very much is the best. I absolutely adore Willie Nelson. So, I don't know. I guess he's the musical equivalent of Abe Lincoln. If there's like some ideal of what a wise, kind person is with a sense of humor, Willie's definitely that. And I love that he will also do an earnest, beautiful, honest rendition of Rainbow Connection, which makes me happy. Yeah, Brad, I'm seeing your comments. I would normally measure the gap from the bottom of the string to the 12th fret, but there I didn't. because I didn't have that tool handy. Let's see. I've only had the one custom Pro reverb come in. The only thing I would do on that amp really is just move the heaters and the screens to the octals. I think they might the screens might have already been moved to the octals. I don't remember that amp, but you know, it's a pretty good amp. Capo me this, capo me that. Let's see, capo. Let's see, trying to catch up. Any thoughts on vintage JBL Alltech EVs, etc. that are used and using modern equivalent specs feature? Hey, if you like the sound, go for it. And Weber's got some really nice reproductions of EVs and JBLs, and Eminence has got some takes that I've not tried, but people seem to like. And EV at least is still making speakers. I have not found the EVs to be consistent, but maybe I've just had bad batches. But you know, the main issue with JBLs and EVs and Fender amps is that A, they're extraordinarily heavy, and B, it makes for hard life on the already not that well built baffle. So if you want to do a great big heavy speaker like that, I would advise getting your baffle replaced with a plywood baffle, because the old ones, the basically particle board, chipboard, and they just cannot take that weight and stress for very long periods of time when humidity exists and heat exists and vibrations exist. Let's see. Castle Doctrine Jr.? I would look at Mojo Tone kits. I know tubesandmore.com just came out with kits. I don't know what their kits are like. StuMac has some out. I think they might be the same as the Mojo Tone kits. I think they might be a partnership, but I don't know. The Mojo Tone kits are really good. Even if they have things in there that parts I wouldn't necessarily use, the parts are fine. Even if the layout has things that I don't wholly endorse, they're going to be fine. So the most important thing is they're going to have really good chassis, really good cabinets, really good boards. Well, the boards are good quality, but really good transformers. You know, it's a sturdy kit. Everything's going to line up, and the parts they give you aren't going to be crap. Thoughts on Mojo Tone kit pre-built by Mojo Tone? I'm sure they're fine. I don't know that they're going to be world class, but they're going to be just fine. But I don't know who's doing the building for them. I don't think it's the same guys who are doing the Omega builds. I think the Omega builds is a different company. So I do not know. Wish I could tell you more how to fix the super reverb that would turn on the fuse blows. I am not astounding on my guitar, but thank you, Sonny. Well, if I had a super reverb come in and the symptom was it blows fuses as soon as you power it on, I would look to see if it was a bad rectifier tube or bad power tubes. That's the most likely cause. And I would open it up and make sure that the screen grid resistors primarily weren't damaged, and that you didn't have it, or that there wasn't some fault in the filter caps. It could be a bad filter cap as well, but the most likely causes are a bad rectifier tube or one or more bad power tubes. And so if you pull the power tubes and pull the rectifier tube, power the amp on, does it blow a fuse? Yes, you have something else wrong. No, power it off, put in the rectifier tube, power it on. Does the fuse blow? Yes, be a bad rectifier tube. No, probably a bad power tube. That's how I'd go about fixing that. I wish I was astounding on my guitar. I used to be much, much better in the picture 13 years ago for the back when I was skinny in the thumbnail. That's also when I was playing out a lot, and my acoustic chops were much better, and I needed less warm-up time, but my hands are not the same. The rest of me is not the same either, sadly. There's more of me, and there's less of the good parts of my hands. This hand is hurting today. And sometimes this wrist, there are times, put it this way, there's a reason I've got a wrist brace right here on the right side of my bench. So when I'm done working on the amps for the day, I put that on sometimes because it just hurts. So, well, yeah, but most amps with low B plus, it's not like there are certain years that are low voltage. You know, I've got pretty low voltage in that non-reverb Princeton over there. It's 380 something, and it has a nice sound to it. That's as B plus at the 6v6s. But I've also played Princeton's in the 440 range that also sound great. And there are other issues in the Princeton affecting the headroom, but it's mostly the Marshalls where it's like, oh, from say 75 to 79, there was a period where they just happened to be real low and squishy. And it's kind of like the difference between the Gibson and the HD28. The Gibson sounds awesome, in part because it compresses and it has a ceiling you can't go above. And as a ceiling you don't go below, so everything is very easy to get in between, whereas a good HD28, it goes very quiet to very loud, and you've got to approach it differently. And habits I picked up on the Gibson for 25 years are suddenly bad habits, which means that when I play the Martin more and get finer control, then I go over to the Gibson, I will still have that control. My turret and eyelet source, when I have turret boards and eyelet boards made, I have Doug Hoffman make them for me. I send him a computer file, and he's got all the stuff, and he sends back the board, and wherever he's getting his turrets from, they've been good. I have not asked him because I don't need to. But whatever Brad says is the good answer. Do I collect vinyl? No, because I would have to have a place to store them, and I'd have to have a turntable, and then I'd have to upgrade the turntable, knowing me, and then I'd probably get obsessed with it, and I have too many other obsessions in my life, and I have really good AD converters these days, and things have been really remastered properly, not like the late 80s CD stuff. And the digital stuff sounds really great when you're not listening to MP3s, when it's all on compressed wave and other formats. So my thousands of CDs I burned into my computer about 5 years ago with a lossless uncompressed thing, and I've got all that stuff backed up on a laptop, an iPad, another laptop, and a couple of disk cards like this. I'm happy with it, and I've got really good sounding speakers here, so I don't need to have any vinyl added to my life. If it ain't a Martin, it ain't shit. Well, okay, that's nice. As I recall, Tony Rice played some other brands, and he did okay. I don't think anyone here is qualified to criticize Tony Rice's acoustic tone. I don't think it's not just here. I don't think anyone anywhere is qualified, except maybe Brian Sutton. And Brian Sutton also plays bourgeois, not just Martin. So Let's see. I don't keep up with Aussie punk. I don't keep up with a lot of punk after about 78. And yeah, good. Within You, Without You, and Love to You are much better implementations of sitar than Norwegian Wood. But Norwegian Wood was like the first song that ever floored me when I was a kid. Let's see, where are we now? At the stuff people are talking to each other during the intermission. So, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Very kind of you. Let's see. I love that I kind of have an acoustic theme, and everyone's talking about punk and psychobilly and the Cramps and stuff. So, you guys are unsteerable. All right, here's a question from Dan Brock. I was trying some mod ideas on a big muff and put a 223K cap, all right, that's a 0.022 microfarad, across the sustain pot lugs. And it sounds more like EVH now instead of a regular. Well, it sounds like Van Halen instead of a, okay. Well, you're going to be bypassing that pot at certain frequencies, but I would have to draw out the schematic and do some math to tell you what it's doing. Other than some of those frequencies are just bypassing the sustain pot entirely.
Houston Rowe thinks I sound like a Muppet.
I won't do that again. So, yeah. I remember when I was a kid and Under the Milky Way came out, like 85, I was 14. And he mentions Memphis. And so a guy on MTV was mentioning Memphis. I felt really seen. What was that? That used to be so important. And then they decided that they would be unimportant forever. What a weird thing for a company to do. I'm sure someone got rich. But it's, hey, let's be totally irrelevant. All right, well, that's not quite a question, but if you like the speaker you got in the AC30S1, that's good. I don't know what that is, a greenback? Let's see. Trying to find the next question. Have I ever tried an LED instead of a bypass cap when I try a cathode in series? I've replaced RC network, so a resistor and a capacitor in a cathode with just an LED. I've not played around with that LED in series with a different diode or resistor. I've not needed to. But yeah, I have. The advantage is that you can have a very predictable voltage on a cathode, and you don't ever have to worry about a capacitor needing to be replaced. And it's a very inexpensive, simple part. And what's really cool is when you play, if you do it right, you can have a little thing on the panel that lights up. You play and you see a little spot of red or whatever. The disadvantage of doing that Merlin doesn't talk about in his article is that an LED is full frequency. It is a total bypass, which has advantages in some circuits, but means you can't use the cathode bypass to sculpt the tone. You have to do all that with coupling cups and standard RC networks. After that, you can't do it all on the cathode. So there are pluses and minuses, but it is cool when you play harder for the little thing to flash redder, or greener, or yellower, or bluer, whatever. Depends on the voltage drop you want. Yeah, I want to get an OM 28 at some point, just for the fingerstyle stuff. Like I said, warming up. Wow. I don't have any nails right now. But the Gibson's just enough smaller than this. I usually get away with that. But I'd like to have an OM 18 or 28. An O or double O would just be too tiny on me. Yeah, it looked like I was playing a little electric uke or something, a little jumbo uke or something. But back when I played all the time and I had nails and I conditioned my nails, I had all that stuff, you know. And I used to be able to play Never Going Back Again by Lindsey Buckingham. That thing is a Charlie Foxtrot of a brain fuck. Why did I avoid saying fuck on Charlie Foxtrot, but then I went straight to it. Anyway, it really does in your head for a long time. I used to have it down, and I went to play it the other day, and it's gone. It's just gone, and this hand was hurting trying to do it, so yeah. But most of what I do is big rhythm stuff. You know, I'm coming at this. I'm not coming at this from Wildwood Flower. I'm coming at this from Zeppelin and Beatles and Stones and Stevie Wonder and REM and stuff like that. So these big jumbos do me well. But I do love the smaller guitars, and the hands have a really good fingerstyle player. The HX Stomp is difficult. It takes a lot of work to get a good sound, or what I consider a good sound. Maybe I'm conceited, or maybe other people really don't have discerning ears or good comparisons. I'm tempted to think that, but maybe I'm just wrong. But it's been very difficult for me to get what I consider acceptable sounds out of it. But I have found ways to do it. The biggest thing I could tell you is if you're using it for pure modeling, you're not running into a cabinet or anything, the internal speaker modeling sucks. Go to Yorkville Audio and buy some of their IRs of different speakers for different mics. Choose something that's appropriate. You can listen to their demos, because those IRs that Yorkville Audio makes are so much better. And you can load them into the HX, and then all of a sudden an amp model that was, maybe I could use that. It's like, okay, that feels much better. It sounds a lot better. The speaker and the mic make a huge difference. But, temper your expectations. You can get usable sounds, and you can get some very good sounds out of the HX, but it's not the second coming that people say it is. And the people who are like, this is the best thing ever, probably haven't tried the rest of the stuff out there. I'll just say that. Thank you, Yevon. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Natas, yeah, other things can become microphonic than tubes. I've even had amps with microphonic tube sockets, especially like an old Marshall, where the preamp sockets are riveted in place. Those rivets come loose, the whole thing becomes microphonic. I'll go through the amp very carefully with a wooden or plastic chopstick and tap on things. And if something goes bing or bong or boom, you might have found the culprit. But yes, other components can be microphonic wires, solder joints, and sometimes film caps, but often ceramic disc caps are the culprits. But I can't tell you without seeing the amp what specifically, but you know, worst case scenario, I've had some things that are really intermittent. Maybe you can see it over there just to the left of that white box, which is the Wi-Fi router. There's a little black thing sticking up. I guess you can't really see it. That's an electric toothbrush I keep around, an old electric toothbrush I keep around just to vibrate things. So I'll take the toothbrush and flip it over so that I'm putting the handle on things, and it vibrates much faster than I can tap, and it can reveal hidden weird problems in amps. Okay, so you got 70, 80 in the AC30S one. Okay, hope it lasts for a really long time for you. I got a 3-part question. Which is, I have to get to it because while you're getting ready to type, Chad came up with a question. ToneMaster Deluxe versus Boss Katana Mark III or HX Stomp XL, what's your flavor? It depends on if you need to hear it on stage. If you need to hear it on stage, the HX Stomp by itself won't get you there unless you're using in-ears. I would suggest that the Katana is a much more versatile amp that's built exactly to the same level of quality as the ToneMaster Deluxe, or you can say that the ToneMaster Deluxe is built no better than the Boss Katana, but you get so many more sounds out of the Boss than you do out of the ToneMaster. And then you could also get the HX Stomp, and if you wanted to, you could just run the HX Stomp into the output, into the effects return of the Katana, and use Katana on stage as a power section so you can hear what the Stomp is doing if you want to go digital modeling and expand your rig. Or for small gigs, you could just take the Katana. You can't do that with the ToneMaster. It doesn't have a loop, so you can't run the Stomp into it. And it only does one sound, and it's not built any better than the much less expensive Katanas. So I'm not a fan of the Deluxe, the ToneMaster. JCM 900 versus JCM 2000. Well, the 2000 depends on the model, but if you're talking about the TSL or DSL, there is no quality. They're horrible, horrible things. The 900 is a really good amp with a couple of known easily fixed and easily preventable common issues. I'm not a huge fan of the JCM 900, but it is a well-built amp for the price. But the 2000s, the most popular JCM 2000s are the TSL and the DSL, and they're absolute garbage. See my channel. I've got videos on them as to why, but amps that like to catch on fire are not my fans, are not my favorites. Good at guitars. One, have I ever been to New Orleans? Yeah, I used to go to New Orleans every summer, and I still go every year or two. We didn't go last year because we were saving up to go to London, and we may go later this summer after Nikki gets some work-related travel out of the way. But New Orleans is our jam, and I feel as at home in New Orleans as I do in Memphis. I know the city very, very well, and I love it. If it weren't for hurricanes, I might live there. Do I like Zydeco? I do like Zydeco, but a little goes a long way for me, if I can say that. It's it's coming from the same kinds of places as bluegrass, where I get it and I appreciate it, and I'm not ever going to criticize someone for loving it, but I do get a little bit tired of Zydeco, the same way I get tired of listening to bluegrass. But I do think it's got a better rhythm. At the beginning of the stream, I was talking about Paul Simon. I love that track, the Zydeco track on Graceland. What was it? I think that was in G as well. Well, a long time ago, yeah, when I was born to, when I was still single, I have this job as a traveling salesman. Kept me moving from state to state. Yeah, I mean, I do like Zydeco, but I don't know. I don't know that I'd necessarily listen to a bunch of Zydeco records, but I'd love to hear it live if there was a crawfish boil happening. I have heard of Beaujacques, but I do not know Beaujacques. Sorry, good at guitars. I'll look that up after the stream. Good night, Step for Crash Pilots. Hey, Adam. Why is it that a tube amp sounds better after it's warmed up for 30 minutes? Well, heat makes things expand. And there are certain components in amplifiers that behave differently at higher temperatures than they do at lower temperatures. This can be the coefficients involved in resistors. It can be the way capacitors behave. It can just be the conductivity of things. And then all the bits of metal inside the tubes expand as they warm up. So it's a real thing. But let me just say different as opposed to better. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. Sometimes, hey, after the first 45 minutes, my amp begins to go, well, that's when it reveals itself as a problem. Sometimes it does sound better. What do I think of Headstrong amps? I don't have any videos on them because I've not had one on the bench, and I don't have any opinions on them until I do, though I've seen some photos of the inside, and I've got questions about some of their ground scheme choices. But from what I hear, they sound good. People like them. All right, I will also look up Carlos Paredes. Thank you, because I do love the Portuguese guitar. I'd love to own one. Guild made the best jumbo, in his opinion. I'd love to have a big Guild 12-string. I've played the Guild jumbos. I don't like the 6-string very much, but the 12-string is just gorgeous. I would love to have a big Guild 12-string. And I would play this. Someday I'll have the right Guild 12-string. Vibrator on an amp? Yeah, well, you can call it a electric toothbrush or a small personal relaxer, whatever you want to call it. I've not had anyone have the guts to bring me a 1-watt Marshall 50th anniversary series. I think the whole thing is very gimmicky. Mark's got a Black Star Studio 106L6, which is a Celestion 70. It's worth changing it for a G1265. Auto people seem to diss Black Star. See my amps under $500 video where I explain why Black Star has an iffy reputation with techs. They do an awful lot for the money. The issue I have is they may not do an awful lot for the money for a very long time. And if someone is saving up to buy a product and it's relatively expensive for them, I think it should last longer, not shorter. And they tend to, when they fail, they tend to fail in stupid ways, and they're very difficult to service, typically. But I'm not familiar with that model. Is it worth changing to a G1265? It might be to you. I would find someone who's got a G1265 that you can hook up to your studio to see if you hear an appreciable difference. I don't know what the Studio 10 cost. Based on the name, it seems like it might be a very inexpensive amplifier. And since a G1265 can be a $150, $175 speaker, it may not make sense to invest in that small amp, but it can be worth it for you, but I can't answer that question for you. I don't think anything about the new Tone King pedal because even though YouTube had like 37 guitar related channels trying to get me to pay attention to that pedal the last week and a half, I have not clicked on one because I don't care. I hope it's fantastic. When all the channels are telling me this new product's out, it's the best thing ever since sliced bread, I think, well, what's so great about sliced bread again? Or I give it the same attention that I give to sliced bread. Okay, someone's getting paid to tell me something about that. I'll wait 6 months to see if any of them are using it then. If they're using it then, maybe it's a good thing. Swamp Donkey Official is retired, living in an RV park. Got a Katana G350. Good. It's a nice little amp. Is it as good as the vintage Fenders and Marshalls and Voxes you see me restore here? No. Also costs less than the service on those amps tends to cost. It is the right tool for the job. I've got a Gibson here that I can't afford to replace, so I bought an Eastman, which I take out with me. The Eastman's the one that if someone calls me to go to their house and play on the porch, that's one I bring. And if I were going to go camping, if I were going to go hiking through the Rockies for 6 months, I wouldn't bring the Eastman. I get a little travel baby Taylor or something for $300. The right tool for the job. I'm not going to take this outdoors with mosquito spray again. I'm not going to take that when it's going to rain. And I think there's a role for a Katana or a similar amp out there. Hey, if you got an old PV Bandit and it floats your boat and it does what you need it to do, that's the right amp. Let's see. Yeah, the Bluetooth doesn't matter that much. I used to sing, but I don't have I have the level of this mic set for speaking, so I don't think singing is going to be a good idea here. Also, I have not warmed up at all, and that's something I very much used to do. Just open up your head. Got any tips for desoldering 20-pin inline switches to get them off the board? Yeah, get a desoldering station. It's not something to do without the proper tools. Single-ended EL84 stereo amp driving me nuts. So it's got 2 output sections to make stereo. No audio until I touch the meter probe to driver tube plate. Then I get a loud buzz. Any suggestions? Well, I'd have to have a lot more information than that. It could be all kinds of stuff. It could be a bad preamp tube. It could be a bad connection, all kinds of things. All you know right now is that the driver plate is connected to the output tube. So when you measure the DC on that plate, you're going to hear it, but that doesn't. You need to see what's happening before the grid of the driver tube, and you need to work backwards from there. And if you touch whatever triode stage precedes your driver, if you measure the voltage on that plate and you don't hear the signal, you don't hear a noise out of the amp, then you know the problems between the driver tube and the preceding tube. Work backwards towards the input. But beyond that, I can't help you. I'm sorry. I'd have to have the amp in front of me or at least clear photos. Thanks, Goody Guitars. Appreciate that. And a second one. All right. Thank you. With a deluge of super sticker pair characters punching the air with fist and bump written on his knuckles. Thank you very much, sir. We play both kinds of music, country and western, Martin. Pie of the week is chicken, bacon, and leek. Are you Welsh? Fletch is 40. Let's see. You pay more than $6 for a beer? What a nightmare. Well, bad news on that front. Yeah, beers can cost a hell of a lot more than $6 these days. But thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. Yeah, most of the review channels are pretty questionable. Some of them occasionally redeem themselves. I've got to say I've seen Brett do some good stuff lately. Not Brett, Rhett do some good stuff lately. Paul Davids is always good, but an awful lot of them are follow the leader, and the leader being whoever writes the copy for the damn product. All right, I'm going to stretch my legs again, and then we're going to take one more 7-minute intermission, and then we'll finish up. So think of really good questions to ask me, guys. Questions that no one's ever asked before. 7 minutes. All right, here we is. Can you use EF184 instead of EF86 and Easy 80 instead of Easy 81? I don't know the EF184. I imagine that you might have changed one of the pinout, and I don't remember the Easy 80, Easy 81 variations. I'm sorry, I don't keep everything in my head. I have to look that up. No nails. Need to get some kind of nails going on, right? Let's see, where were we? I do like holding a guitar for these things. It does make me feel better. Maybe just because it hides my gut a little bit. Let's see. Sparks aren't bad. They're good practice tools. If I were to retune my PF20T to get closer to old B15 tones, I wouldn't recommend new old stock tubes. It's a lot of money to spend for no guaranteed return, and you hit a pothole on the way to the gig where you got to make $40, you're out $400 for no good reason. I love Nick Drake. I need to have another guitar just to leave it in DAG-GAD and alternate between DAG-GAD and Open G. I love Open G as well. Yeah, Buckwheat Zydeco is phenomenal, and yeah, he does more than just straight Zydeco. The same way I love Brian Sutton, but I don't care so much about the pure bluegrass things he does, or Molly Tuttle, or Dan Tominski. Speaking of, but I love when they take that technique and that musicality into other realms because they're just phenomenal players. It is not Aardman Animations, but it is very similar. It is Aardman inspired, I imagine, whoever made this handy device. And it's kind of a duck, kind of. After tons of YouTube videos explaining amp schematics, I still can't figure out the difference between conductors and resistors. Never had electrical education at school. Am I hopeless? Well, conductors is not a term that we would use very often because conductor is just something that conducts electricity, conducts current. Do you mean condensers, which is what the Brits call capacitors? So as far as the difference between a capacitor and a resistor, one impedes current, resists current, restricts flow. That's a resistor. A capacitor joins two different signals, two different voltages. You say you have DC on one side, you put a capacitor on the other side of the capacitor. If you have a ground reference, you'll just have AC remaining. It will block the DC but let AC through, and you can use different capacitors with different resistors to get different filters. And then it gets really complicated and you'll go to sleep. But electronics is not for everyone. Certain things, it just clicks, and other people, they're not going to get it, then that's fine. I don't understand the appeal of NASCAR. Okay, they drive in a circle. They're all very hardcore conservatives who spend all their time going left. Okay, I get it, I guess. I don't particularly enjoy hockey. It's just like, the ice charades with fighting. Is the layout of a circuit in an amp as important as the circuit itself? Almost. The circuit's the primary thing, because if you have a bad circuit, it doesn't matter how well it's laid out. But if you have a great circuit, a bad layout can undo it or can introduce problems that the circuit in itself cannot prevent, the circuit is just, hey, if the situations are optimal, this is what the sound will be. And then the layout is making the conditions optional for that, ideal for that circuit to operate. Warren Haynes gets a great tone out of his Soldanos, better than others he've heard. Any ideas what he had done to them to get that sound? The Soldano in stock form has got a 1 farad bright cap, and his amps have that removed. And that's a big part of it. The rest of it is just he's Warren Haynes, and the rest of us are not. He's phenomenal. How do I sound like Warren Haynes or Derek Trucks? Be them. Be a genius. Well, especially Warren Haynes is a great player, but Derek is a savant. Yeah, I mean that's not quite fair because it makes you think that he can't function in other ways. Derek Trucks is just scary, frightening. Warren Haynes is just a very accomplished guitarist. But the main thing is he sounds great playing his Soldanos that happen to have had that bright cap removed, which makes them a little less nasal, but he would sound just as good through any amp that you own as the amp that he chooses to use. And in fact, he doesn't just use Soldanos. On a parallel first stage, to increase even order harmonics, would I go for separate anode resistors or separate cathode, both none? It depends on what I wanted to do. If I was trying to parallel stuff just for the sake of introducing different harmonics, I would probably, I might play around with the cathode. I might play around with the plate, whether I would do true individual plate resistors or whether I did a split. I could do a split on the plate to get much the same result. But I probably would, well, I guess it would be complicated to do the split thing on that. But I might keep the plate the same and play around with different cathodes. But maybe vice versa. It depends on what you want to achieve. The only way to know is to experiment with it. Is the SPICE modeling that we use for a lot of electronics modeling is not accurate, truly accurate for triode and pentode behavior. So the best thing to do is to say, all right, I figured everything else out in the circuit I want to do. I know that this is going to be a good starting point. And now I've just got to go in there and put a whole bunch of switches and rotary position stuff in and dial it in until I hear what I like. And remember to leave room for happy accidents. Speaking of Soldano, Mike Soldano, the trick to the SLO is that 39K cathode resistor and that added gain stage. Apparently he thought he was putting in a 3.9K. He was starting off with a 3.9K and he grabbed the wrong resistor. He's off by a factor of 10 and it cooled that bias way the hell down, and he likes the way that sounds. But he would not necessarily have chosen that sitting down to do the math. Why do some Marshall voice makers use bright caps on high gain and others do not? Because that's one of the places that makes this Marshall sound different from that Marshall, where, okay, that's more of a Van Halen thing or that's more of a Dokken thing. There aren't that many variables you play with in most Marshall circuits unless you're going into the added diode clipping stuff. And so bright cap value is a big factor in that. The bright cap, there are two bright caps in most Marshalls. There's the one on the volume pot and there's the one across the mix resistor. And you play with all that kind of stuff, and then you can play around with if you bypass the cathode follower driver stage, or if it's just on bypassed 820, that's one sound. You can do a 680 nanofarad across it, that's a different sound. You can do a large value cap, so you get a full gain increase across the entire frequency spectrum there. That's another sound. Or you can do a very small bypass cap and really emphasize the treble as opposed to the upper mids. There are all these places to play around with, but there's only 3 or 4 places that most people tweak the traditional Marshall circuit. Beyond that, unless they're adding other gain stages, they're adding diode clipping stuff, which is a different approach. I have no thoughts on a Gladio pedal, sorry. I've not had one in. Start with books, Chris K. If you want to repair amps, get the books that Merlin sells over at valvewizard.co.uk. I need to have a graphic on these chats because I get asked that question a couple times every stream. But valvewizard.co.uk, he's got great articles on his website, and the books he sells are his books, and they're fantastic. Let's see. Should the negative feedback loop be connected at the 4-ohm input or 8-ohm input? And it just scrolled on me again. This thing hasn't been scrolling on me, and all of a sudden today it's scrolling. The old YouTube interface scrolled all the time. Or now I can read it, sorry. Should the negative feedback loop be connected to the 4-ohm input or 8-ohm input for a 2204 with EL34s? It doesn't matter if you're connected to the 4-ohm, 8-ohm, or 16-ohm tap. What matters is which tap you connect to in conjunction with which value of resistor. So Marshall always did the following. If they use the 16-ohm tap, they use a 100K resistor. If they use the 8-ohm tap, they use a 47K resistor. If they use the 4-ohm tap, they use a 27K resistor. So if you measure if you disconnect the negative feedback wire from the impedance selector switch, and you measure that resistor, oh, mine's 100K, then I need to connect that. If I want the traditional sound, I connect that to the 16-ohm tap. Now, some Marshalls and many clones are miswired, and instead of connecting that to the secondary, so you always have the same amount of negative feedback no matter which speaker impedance is used, they'll connect it to the output of the switch, which means that if you have 100K and you're connected to an 8-ohm or 4-ohm speaker, you're going to have very little negative feedback at all. Your presence isn't going to do much. Your resonance, if present, won't do much. And the amp will be a little bit harder to control. And the converse can be true. If you have the 27K and it should be connected to the 4-ohm, but then you connect it to you use a 16-ohm setting, then all of a sudden you're going to have way too much negative feedback, which can cause other problems. So that's the answer. And I'm trying not to. All right, Pastor's got a long, convoluted joke there. Martin, was there ever an amp that I never managed to repair? Yeah, quite a few, mostly because they're just pieces of shit. Very recently, there's a TC Electronics bass amp where they were no longer made that model, and they did not have the replacement PCB for that preamp anymore. I contacted the company, and the replacement PCB was their solution. Back when it was under warranty, they just changed out the board. Out of warranty, they didn't plan on field service, and that board was a 4-layer board with inner layers being used. And so the problem was on an inner layer of the board. I couldn't do anything about it because it was a piece of shit. So I gave it back and said, I'm sorry. Is dead. I can't do anything. Similar thing with a Mark base not too long ago. There are things that cost more than they're worth to repair, and I'll return them. But it's not like I've run into an electronics problem that I could not cure. It's sometimes the company has made something inherently unfixable, and that it's not realistic to ask me to fix the thing that they designed to die. All the TC bass amps have crappy pots. All right, so it's the Europeans in general call them condensers. I've seen some Brits call them condensers, but I'm not going to get into cultural differences. But whether you call it a condenser or a capacitor, it's different than a conductor, which is different than an inductor. An inductor is a coil that has a behavior, and it could be something as simple as a pickup, or it can be a full transformer. And a conductor is that creepy guy that Tom Hanks played in Polar Express. Don't ever look at that; it's scary. Have I ever seen the Northern Lights? I missed to put it up on the screen, but no, I've not seen them. I haven't been the farthest north I've ever been is Vienna, and Someday maybe I'll see them. Maybe in an airplane, nice warm airplane, well away from snow. He's got a 95 custom Vibrolux reverb on the bench. Caps replaced, new set of JJ tubes. Volume minimum, still hear audio. Affects both channels. Is covered in one of my playlists. Sometimes you can get that with some Russian tubes like tungsols. If you ground the wiper, the volume pot, so you know that the volume pot really is going to ground, then it's a problem before that. It could also be. So sometimes I've just had the Russian tubes just bleed, so V1 bleeds into V2. I guess through the B plus. Try that first. Other than that, ground grids until it goes away. If it only goes away if you ground the input grid of the amp, then it may be layout. Lead dress, some wires too close to another. But in general, that symptom makes me want to try different preamp tubes. And it can be as simple as replacing a Russian tube with a JJ or a Chinese tube, which are less prone to that for some reason. Let's see. What are my thoughts on the 30-watt Bluesbreaker JTM 2x12 combo? It depends. Some of those have output transformers and power transformers mounted in the wrong orientation, so they have a lot of noise, and the only fix is to rotate one of them, which can be very expensive. And on others, while they installed them correctly the first time, the transformers used in that era, the 90s and early 2000s, are crappy transformers, and the power transformers begin to emit really noisy fields, which are picked up by the input of the phase inverter. So while they can be made great, and I have done it, the last couple of ones that have come in, I've had to either rotate the transformer and replace the or replace a transformer, or just replace a power transformer. But at the end of that, they're phenomenal sounding amps, but you shouldn't need to replace a power transformer routinely in a 30-year-old amp. And you should, a company like Marshall should never have released a product where the orientation of the transformer was incorrect to begin with. So I would not buy one from Marshall because I would not reward them with that money, but I'd buy a used one if it was a good price. Hey, Martin Arbo, I answered the question on Headstrong earlier with I'm not sure, I'm waiting to see. I didn't say they're all hardcore conservatives, but there's a huge Venn diagram overlap there, wallpaper music. That's just that culture. And I live in that culture. I'm surrounded by that culture every day. It's no stretch to say there's a huge Venn diagram overlap there. What vintage guitars and amps do I own? I own no amps myself. I don't have a need to. And of my guitars, this 25-year-old Southern Jumbo, I guess, is approaching vintage in by some definitions. This is the oldest guitar I have, followed by a 2005 Eric Johnson Strat. Well, if I said they all are, well, then I said they all are, whatever. Sometimes we misspeak. Don't go out of your way to get mad at me for misspeaking. It was just a joke about conservatives turning left for hours at a time. That's not exactly a scathing takedown of people. So if you want a scathing takedown, I've got some that I try to keep off the channel. Because, it's just that's a very minor thing. All right. So, we're just bullshitting about acoustics at this point. Maybe I scared off all the hardcore conservatives. This is a subject I'm going to be researching. Capos, for those of you who speak Italian. So this is a page click capo, or capo. I've had this now for about 15 years, I guess. How's it going? There it is. And it works pretty well, but it's getting a little bit rattly now, 15 years in. And the new ones they're making are not this. And I don't like the way the bar attaches on the new pages. And I don't like the looks of it. And D'Addario's got a cradle style for like $80 that Ned Steinberger designed, but I've heard that they break. So kind of avoid that. Shub's got a F1 cradle style capo, also worth looking into. But I think rather than get the Shub or the D'Addario, I would rather pay $20 more and get the cat's eye. The cat eyes, it's handmade by a guy. But I've always wanted an Elliott. And if you look at all the great acoustic players, from Lyle Lovett to Brian Sutton to Billy Strings and all that, they all go with the Elliott. And it's not because they're rich or they like to have expensive things. It's if it's just that good that all the true pros grab it, and I love playing acoustic guitar, and I can afford it, I might be buying myself an Elliott. And the nice thing is, unlike a lot of Martins and Gibsons, where most Martins have a 16-inch radius, this has got a 12-inch radius. It's Gibson. The Eastwood also has is also 12-inch radius, so I could move it back and forth. And I use a capo a lot, not because I can't play, I can't play bar chords or anything, but because for playing live, it lets you play things in the correct keys, it lets you use open strings in your riffs, which I can't do right now because I'm thinking about it. And also, if I'm playing with a bunch of guys and they're all doing this all night long, I'd rather be up here. And so, it just gives me a little more flexibility because when you're doing bars all the time for rhythm, you just can't add much to it. So it's nice to have a capo. The other one I've got, very well reviewed on all the guitar channels, the G7 thing. And it works, but it does not work as well. It's not as consistent. And it's not pretty. It's slower. It affects the tuning more. It's not as pretty, and that matters. The Thalia stuff I don't like. The Thalia's big square edges and bad, ugly veneers. I think they're hideous. They work fine, but I just think they're hideous. So I think I might splurge this year and reward myself with an Elliott. Just don't make fun of me for having a boutique capo, because I think I see Lyle Lovett use it live, and it takes him 3 seconds to change, and he's in tune. I see Brian Sutton use it, and it's even faster. For those of you out there using a Kaiser or the old Shubs, try some of the better stuff out there, because those Kaisers just clamp all the strings to the side, and your tuning goes to hell. There's just no way around that. My song I love to play and sing the most. Well, I'm not going to sing on here, but basically, if I were to just sit down and play stuff I love, I'd probably just play all of Rubber Soul in its entirety. Because I know all that stuff, and Revolver. Such a nice guitar. Is the Mini Silver Jubilee good for $1,500? No. Crappy pots, not very good parts. Aside from Dumbles, is there anything else that seems overly praised? I don't think Dumbles are bad. There's nothing wrong with the Dumble. But, there's a level to which they should be praised, which is a high level, and then it's just crazy. The train wrecks and Dumbles are not worth $40,000 plus. But, they're really good, and I don't think that Ken Fisher ever made $40,000 selling one, If I could remember how it goes. Why can't I play today? This thing just so, when I remember how things go, it's so forgiving. And that one shows all my warts. Gurf Morlix. I have no idea who or what Gurf Morlix is. I'll look that up afterwards. Colorado Capos. I'll look that up. But I have an acoustic guitar. I do have an acoustic guitar. I have two. I just don't want to sing on here. People are so unkind. And I'm not warmed up, and if I hit one bad note, people will that's what they'll take away from it. It's weird. I don't know. Just not feeling it today. Songs I absolutely love. Literally all of them. I forget. That's just. Haven't played in too long. I used to know all that stuff. I still do. It would take me 5 minutes to remind myself. How come they've yellowed the tuning pegs but not the fret markers? The fret markers are mother of pearl. They don't yellow. The binding and everything else is plastic and ages. Gurf Morlix played guitar for Lucinda Williams. Okay. That was You Won't See Me. Let's see how this goes. It just goes to A7 there. It goes from A minor and then to the A7. No, I wouldn't. Anyway, so rusty. 'Cause I'm fixing amps all the time. Or things, time now 10:30. The inlay on here is mother of pearl, but these inlays are underneath lacquer. So the lacquer's here in age, and these inlays don't have any lacquer on them. So that's how you end up like this. I'm glad someone likes my guitar bass. Yeah, I mean, this thing was so sad when I started this stream with those 11s on it. No more 11s for you, baby, I promise. All right, well, I'm going to get out of here, let you guys get on with your Saturdays and all that fun stuff. Where is that button? We'll turn that off. I appreciate you all being here, putting up with my string changing experiments and my rambles. Didn't get as many questions answered, but then there weren't as many questions asked. Maybe I'm driving everyone away, or maybe my guitar was just that bad. It's possible. Yeah, it's a no-date sub you spot, Sonny. Well, it's not a Rolex. I wouldn't spend $12,000 on one. This is a Kronos, but it keeps the time just fine. And how do I store and keep the Gibson at proper humidity? I put it on a stand in the living room, and in the winter I've got one of those damp it things I'll put in there. Sometimes I'll put in the case if we have a really bad spell of bad humidity, but the rest of it, we get a lot of humidity, and it just lives and breathes with the rest of us. It is what it is. All right, see you guys next time. We out.